We should get started. We got a good group. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I see a good mix of distributors, contractors, and users on with us. That's great. Welcome to Tech Talk Tuesday. This is season 2, episode 36. And if you're joining us for the first time, all the previous episodes are available on YouTube. The handle is Basleine Web Training, all one word on YouTube. And then there's all kinds of helpful YouTube videos on how to program things, how to set things up. And I know this last week, I must have referred at least 5 videos over to people that had called me to do things like set up an account, connect a cell phone, program the controller. So if you want to know how to do something, YouTube is a great resource, and we encourage you to go there as a resource. So absolutely. The topic for today is it's a continuation of last week. Last week, we ended on pipe view as we were talking about the data, using the data. We ended on pipe view, and we didn't have a chance to go down to that next level, which is Basleine Analytics, and the reason you might want to use analytics, what analytics is, and what kinds of data that you are allowed to see. So that's what we're going to pick up today. We have a special guest, Bob Beers. Bob is the product manager for Basleine. And so I'm saying that because it's important that if you have an idea for something or you would like something improved, you can drop it in the chat today and we'll take a note. Bob keeps something that's called the parking lot, which is the parking lot full of ideas that can then get prioritized and potentially put into play and put into the programming. So if you're thinking of something, don't hesitate to drop it in with us today. And we also have Dan Conger, our training manager, Chris Wright, our VP of sales, and I'm Andy Humphrey, irrigation technology consultant. And welcome. Let's get this one started.
Nice.
All right.
For sure. So looking at, Base Manager, AppManager, there are a lot of different areas that we can drill into data. So I know you guys talked a little bit last week, specifically about Base Manager and Pipe View. And so a couple quick notes as it relates to that. Pipe View is going to be where you go to really look at flow and hydraulic specific data, and then being able to extract reporting data and information from that view. But again, it's really specific to hydraulic performance, flow, and pressure of what's going on in that pipe. So pipe view, of course. Base Manager, you're going to get more programming related data and being able to look at information like what zones ran, when, and for how long. And then set that information against run times to moisture and have some graphical overlays for that. Mobile Access is another tool set that contains data. It's not really a historical type of tool that you would access to look at what happened, say, the day before previously, but it can be a great tool for users while they're in the field and being able to pull real-time data by testing that devices and looking at real-time flow information while you're on site with your mobile device. So Mobile Access is still a great tool for users while they're in the field and being able to pull real-time data as it's happening at that point in time. Analytics is kind of our current primary holding area for all information related to a company, a site, a controller, and then down to a specific zone. And so we kind of look to analytics as our high-level starting point, and then let the user drill down based off of what are they doing at that point in time. Are you looking at, historical performance for usage at a site, in which case there's specific information that you're going to want to pull and look into versus drilling down all the way to a zone level. And we'll show you guys how to do that.
Yeah. When did analytics become part of the AppManager framework, Bob? We've had it for a couple of years now.
Pretty close to a couple of years. So we first released it February of 2019.
Okay.
So we're coming up on almost 3 years. Actually, February of 2020 is when it first dropped. And version 1.0, maybe 1.5. So we've had some improvements on the data integrity over time, but still, an overall platform that is so flexible and there's so much we can continue to do with it. So this is where, I love to hear feedback on, what are you trying to do with data and how is this enabling that? And then where can we see opportunities to improve it? So if you've used this tool set and you have feedback, love to hear it. Drop it in the chat. I think it's great information. But for those of you who aren't familiar with it, this is kind of where you start off. You're at your account level. It's going to give you your user information and you're going to see your company. So this is the highest level we can go in the hierarchy. And by clicking into some of these areas, you have this download report, and you'll see this populated throughout AppManager in different tool sets, and this will pull a PDF report that you can then share with key stakeholders, whether it's teammates, employees, contractors, or maybe an HOA or a stakeholder that you need to show how your site or company has performed year over year, and then being able just to provide direct data that's visualized and easy to consume.
Yeah, it's funny, Andy. I know it's been my experience in talking about analytics with contractors. They've always been amazed, and they're like, "You have all this data, and where do I find that? How do I access it?" Right?
Yeah.
So there are some users of it, but there are a lot of non-users of it, and that's why we want to highlight it. Because there is a lot of great information contained within it that we can reference and look at the data and see why that real-time data makes a difference.
Yep. And sometimes, just going in and looking at the data for no reason can be a waste of time. If you don't have a purpose for digging into the details, you're just wasting your time. You may be curious, and that's fine. But a lot of times going into the details is because there's maybe a specific problem that you're trying to solve. So a contractor may say, I'm having performance issues at 2 a.m. and I'm getting these low flow alerts, or I'm getting a high flow alert, things like that. Then when there's a problem, we can drill down and try to figure out with the data what the problem might be.
Yeah, it kind of takes the export log that is contained in the controller and puts it into a graphical format that's easy to interpret, rather than having to look at lines of data code in a CSV file that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right. And then being able to look at a totalization of all controllers. So instead of having to pull an individual log from a single controller, we'll pull it for all controllers at a site, and then all sites within a company. So this would be at the company level, overall usage. And then you could manipulate the date ranges and export it, and then show how you looked at June of 2018 to 2019 to 2020 to 2021, and then look at a trend of company performance, and then be able to easily extract that data and share it with key stakeholders.
Yep. So Bob, let me just ask you a question about that. So let's say that the company was this HOA and it's in Texas. I'm just completely making up a fictitious site here. And there are 72 controllers across this whole site. What you're saying is they could click on their company and then see the water usage across all 72 controllers or all 164 flow devices?
Absolutely. So it all plumbs up. So what we're looking at here would be the company level. And then for that HOA, maybe this is their Texas location that they can select and click down into. And then this would be the summation of all of those controllers at the site, all 72 of them, all of the 160 plus flow sensing devices, the data that each individual flow sensing device collects, say at the flow decoder level. And we've mentioned this on previous Tech Talk Tuesdays, the decoder itself remembers its flow usage data, as well as the real-time GPM that it's recording, and sending that to the controller. So starting at the decoder and then pulling that information to the controller, and then from the controller up into the server, and then collecting all of that data at a site level, and then being able to display that to the user.
And so, Bob, let me just ask you or restate what I think I just heard you say, is that the decoder, the black decoder module, stores the water use. So in theory, you could cut it off the system, put it in a box. A year later, connect it back to the 2-wire system, and that flow information is still there, stored inside the decoder.
Yep, at the decoder level itself.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think it's very impressive.
It's its own little computer.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's part of what helps enable some of this ability to be able to drill down from a company to a site, all the way down to the device level that we'll show you here in a second.
And I can see that being important because sometimes communication could fail, right? If there's water use happening, but the decoder loses communication with the controller, that real-time data could get lost at that point. But because it's stored in the decoder, which is connected to the device, it's never going to get lost because it's always right there. Even if there's flow happening and the controller goes down, there's still flow happening.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right.
And so at the site level, currently this is focused primarily on flow performance and water usage. If you have ideas about other types of data or information you'd like to see at the site level, that's information, I'd love to hear if you have a reason for it. Again, please throw that into the chat, or you can always feel free to reach out to me directly with ideas and feedback. But drilling down from the company to a site, and then we can get down into the controller level. So in Andy's example, we're an HOA in Texas, and I have 72 controllers, and I want to look at some specific information about one of the controllers. Then I can start to drill down into that information. And you see, once we get to the controller level, we'll start to populate more device-specific information. So firmware versions, MAC addresses, the geolocation of that device, and then being able to look at prior day, how much, what was its runtime, manual runtime, total usage by flow, any associated messages to that device. And so this is where you can start to look at some troubleshooting, being able to pull and export this into a report. Also useful if there's a specific message that you cared about or had issues with or concerns about. More flow information, and this is again is specific to this individual controller. And we saw that this was a 3200, so we could have up to 8 flow sensing devices connected to this one controller that could be used to then totalize its overall usage that we see presented in the historical range. And with any of these slide out menus in analytics, we can also export this individual data point into different file types. So you can export all of this into a single report, or it's going to pull all of this information together. Or if there's a certain data set that you want, you can also go into these what we call hamburger menus, set the date range that you're looking for, and then export that right from that point in the user interface. And then you can also drill down into this information. So you can go from a month to a week, and you can just start to click into it and look at tighter and tighter data resolution for a specific controller. And this is true at the company level, the site level, the controller level, all the way down to the individual device level. Will allow you to click into it and then see tighter and tighter resolution of the timeline for the data set that you're looking for. If there's a specific event you're looking for usage, you can go all the way down to the minute level.
And you, just as for an example, July 9th has more water usage than any other day in that week. Can we drill down on that day and see what it looks like?
Yep. And then we could see hour by hour. So it looks like we hit a water window and began irrigating and ran it.
So what happens if you click in at, say, 8 p.m. or 6 a.m. where you've got a nice big green bar?
Yeah, we'll go to all the way down into that minute level resolution.
Look at that. Now, I have to admit, I'm learning quite a bit watching this.
I think we all are.
Right? So I want people to drop in the chat. I want you to indicate if you've used analytics, if this is brand new to you, you've never seen it, and indicate how often you use it if you do use it.
Yeah, Chris he's asking, everyone has to enter something, yes or no, or how often.
Yeah.
So my epiphany I just had was version of firmware. Well, if I have 50 controllers, how do I know how many of them I need to update? I could look right in here and see all of my controllers without opening them. That little simple thing is brilliant, but like we're all finding something that's additionally wonderful.
Yeah, and looking at the data, different data points, different data types, and then how you use that information and who needs it and when do they need it, and being able to look at things like this. It could be the end of program 1 and the start of program 2, but you've got a little gap here. You can see it at the controller level, and this could help inform programming methodologies to tighten up your water window if you're not using things, say, like managed by flow or other unique baseline features. But being able to see the data is kind of different than mapping it out maybe in a programming tab, but actually seeing how the controller is behaving at that site and collecting that information and then showing it to you. And then you could go in here, export it, ask questions, and really kind of use the information to improve the overall system performance and quality of the site.
Yeah, well, sometimes we see questions come up when we either have a pump station or a well pump, because that has to produce the water at a certain pressure. So sometimes those don't always operate as we either want or expect. And it's nice to be able to look in and see what that pump or well is doing at a certain gallon per minute or at a certain pressure.
Exactly.
Great question came in the chat. Is this 3200 centric, or can we get the same info for the 1000?
So currently, from when we released it, it's currently specific to the 3200. And to expand on that, it's actually 3200 controllers that have a firmware version of 17.9 or higher. We'd recommend you go to 18.1. That's now available, regardless. But this will, at 17.9 is when we'll be able to expose different electrical diagnostic data down to a minute resolution.
I was going to ask you, Bob, is that because of the way that the data is stored in the controller? What is different about 17.9 versus anything before that?
Yeah, so for controllers or 3200s that would say have 1234 or V16 or early 17.0 versions, we'd still be able to collect and see the historical flow data based off of the controller logs. But prior to that, the controller didn't know to look at 1 minute increments and store it on the 2-wire path. So the 2-wire electrical circuit from the controller itself. So it looks at that information and processes it to make real-time dynamic decisions, but we weren't storing it in a log and then pushing it up to the server. So 17.9 is what enabled that functionality. So previously we were always looking at that information from our decoders and from the 2-wire circuit itself, but 17.9 then enabled us to store the information and send it up to the server.
Present it graphically.
Yeah, and I'm thinking another great use case would be if you want to optimize your hydraulics to run, let's say, at 150 gallons a minute. You want to have zone concurrency set up so that it's running at 150 gallons per minute. If that's the goal, you could come into analytics and see on the average, what is my system running at? Is my concurrency open enough to allow that 150 to be optimized over time?
Yeah. Yep. Am I optimizing the system?
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Flow and electrical requirements, it's all there. So very useful data, really regardless of user type, it's just how you're looking at it and why you're looking at it.
Could you click on zones for us, Bob?
Yeah.
And just pick any zone. I don't know. Chris, do you know what a particular zone? How about some turf grass?
Back turf.
MP.
Yeah. Zone 5.
So this is going to also give us the flow for this specific zone over time.
Yep, and we'll expose the serial number, obviously the type, and then its geolocation. Any open messages for that zone. This is the real-time state, so currently not populating anything, but there's nothing that's been going on.
Could you scroll back down and go to July that we were looking at before? Because I feel like a frequent question that comes in is somebody wants to look at the historical flow rate on a specific zone. And if you look at our older reports that are in BaseManager, we didn't have that availability. And it was a question that comes up a lot. They want to know the flow rate of a specific zone. And this is how you can get there.
Yep. So we could see June 27th through July 5th of this year. We see this pulled out, and then you'll be able to go down and see when the zone ran and for how long, and then associated run times.
And then what about click back to like day or week there, since we do have, a week period. So there we go.
So we knew it ran in this week or this day,
yeah.
And then for 8 minutes, 13 minutes, 18 minutes. So we can see each of these individual events and then show you how long it ran and when.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can export this information. If you have any questions, why did we run 18 minutes on July 30? Pop that out real quick. This will be, again, real-time flow based off of this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so this up here is run times, and then
That's
this is
right.
actual estimated usage based off of what data you have available for the zone level. And then, just like Andy had.
There we go. So on that day, this particular zone used 453 gallons on Monday, July 5th. Yep.
Yeah, for that week, it was 450. And then looks like we could see all the way down
look
to
at
the
that.
minute level.
Is that a soak and cycle?
Yep. On, running, off, and then cycle back on until it hit its runtime requirement.
Best management practices.
Yep.
Cycle soak.
And then, yeah, you could call that out. You could export it. And this is exactly what we'd want to see for best management practices. And it's implemented, and you have proof aside from your programming model, but here's actual captured events where it's being implemented. And then the real-time diagnostic information. So this is all two-wire historical diagnostics. So real-time, if we were energizing a solenoid, the two-wire drop, you could see if we're having any impedance or issues on the two-wire path for that point in the two-wire path.
Mm-hmm.
And then being able to then drill down. So if we lost communication with the device, you'd be able to drill down to perhaps when that event occurred. And then we can also see, different energized events. So looking at what we're seeing here.
So it's kind of small. What's the green line, blue line, and orange line?
Yep. So green is going to be your voltage.
Okay. Yep.
Blue is your current. And then orange is your two-wire drop. So here it looks like we energize. Here's our inrush, holding, and then quiescent. We're not running anymore. And then there's information you can infer here too. As you see, your inrush might be going up or down. Why is that? Is the solenoid getting old? It's a new site. Maybe you just inherited this site, and you've retrofitted it. You now have Basleine. And this can help indicate what types of solenoids might be out there if you haven't done specific checks. Just looking at the data, you could start to infer this information and be able to track it.
Most people really wouldn't, many people would not really need this data or want this data. But if you've got a specific issue or something's going on, like you just alluded to, this would be critical, or it could really solve that, shorten that sleuthing it out, shorten that time.
Yeah, diagnostics, I think, is a key word on the heading there. Really, we call it analytics, but really it's a great diagnostic tool.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this would make a great Ask the Trainer episode, Dan, where you record, looking at a site like this, and then what are the normal parameters that you would want to be within for a healthy electrical system, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And what you could be seeing here too is, why would we see the two-wire drop increase after the zone runs? And this could be an indication that there is water encroachment onto the two-wire path. Maybe there's a nick. So we ran, and then the water infiltrates down into the soil profile, reaches the wire conduit. Maybe there's a hole in it, or there's an opening. That impedance occurs, and now we're seeing an increase in the two-wire drop. We're having trouble communicating to this guy, but then it dries out, and we're fine until we run again. So you could see this pattern of behavior over time simply by drilling into this tool set.
I think I know exactly where that nick is.
And we provide this data, for all device types. So this is the zone data, but we also have, our flow sensing devices that we can pull information about that's specific to that device type, and being able to pull flow data, because that's what it's capturing, but then also it's electrical diagnostic information. If we lost communication with it or having performance issues specific to a device, we can go in and start to pull information that's specific to it and better understand what's happening at the site, where and why. And this is really important when we're trying to troubleshoot or diagnose or be able to communicate to potentially a customer what we're seeing and what we're experiencing. And then it's not guessing, it's actual data, it's fact.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's come up pretty common with me is people ask, can I use my conventional wire path? Can I use two number 14s as a two-wire path? And sometimes people inherit those sites. You would be seeing those symptoms in this data, and a site manager could use this data to show to their property manager that we need to replace this wire path because these are some of the problems it's causing. You could actually have a report that shows that.
Absolutely. Exactly.
I love, Chris, look at the green line there. Yeah. I believe that's temperature. That is showing the seasonal variability of temperature
in the soil profile.
Right.
In the root
Which is
zone.
exactly what you would expect the soil to be warmer in the months of July and August and then taper back down.
Yep.
Yep. And this is the kind of the correlated data that you'd want. So my company used more water this year than last year. Why? and then being able to look at an individual soil moisture sensor at that HOA, and then look at, the actual soil profile temperature and see year over year, this is what I measured July 18, 2021, and here's where we were July 18, 2020. We're 3 degrees higher.
Right. Yep. And that's actually what really matters is the air temperature is one thing, but it's how does the air temperature affect the moisture temperature, the soil temperature.
Right.
Exactly.
Helps us understand how evapotranspiration is happening in the landscape in real time.
One question, Chris, you might know the answer to this. I'm in moisture sensors, but I see Precip Sensor here. Why do you have a moisture sensor named Precip Sensor?
Because that Precip Sensor, moisture sensor, is associated with the Precip Sensor, which is the tipping rain bucket technology.
Interesting.
So the Pro Kit?
The Pro Kit, correct.
Perfect. So we'd be able to see the moisture data, and then you said you have a Precip sensor using tipping rain bucket technology. And so we'd be able to pull into that. So if you're seeing real-time rainfall, but then this is also your accumulation over time. So that device has seen this increase here. So Precip sensor data, really any device type that we support on the 2-wire path will populate here. If you don't have a specific device type, it won't populate. So if you, for some reason, didn't have a Precip sensor using tipping rain bucket technology or pressure sensor, you would not see those device options. And then as you bring them on and the controller sees it, so search and assign, then you'd be able to see those things. And so same thing here with pressure, being able to see that real-time pressure information, download a report, see the pressure data over time and the system performance. And again, this is where you can correlate pressure and flow rates, and then looking at your system performance. And the nice thing, same thing within Pipe View, of being able to drill down into that minute and hour resolution, looking at flow dynamics and a piping structure in your water window, and then using that information to optimize. It's a very powerful data set that we provide in Pipe View, and then in analytics, all the way up from a single device to the entire company, and looking at that flow usage and totalization.
Very cool.
Dang.
Awesome. I'm glad we recorded this because I'm going to watch it again. It's a lot of information that is very, very helpful, and a tool that is underutilized. So asking for you to drop into the chat whether or not you use it. It's not a shaming exercise by any means. Just indicates that we need to do a better job in talking about it and sharing it with our customers. So
we asked the question because we already knew the answer, and that's why we were showing it today.
Yeah, I never ask rhetorical questions. What do you mean?
Yeah, and on my end, again, as product guy, always looking for ideas. What can we add here? How can we make it better? Within AppManager overall too, the way we've kind of modeled this is you go into your specific app looking for that specific type of data. That's why Pipe View is very flow-centric. And then in the future, if we have a device management application or a schedule management application, similarly, the data you would find in that app would be specific to that type. Then analytics is always going to be that roll-up. It's going to pull all flow data, all device data, any kind of programming data in the future that we'll be able to pull together. And then analytics is that main landing spot for all the information for a company site, controller, device.
Very cool. Awesome, Bob. We are at the bottom of our hour. So well done. Great information. Well presented. Went through it systematically. Hopefully that was useful for everybody that joined us today. We appreciate you taking the time to jump on and share 30 minutes of your week with us. It's typically my favorite 30 minutes of the week to be able to discuss Basleine technology with everybody. So give us feedback. If you haven't invited coworkers or colleagues or associates to join Tech Talk Tuesday, please encourage them to do so. We're always looking for additional registrants and participants. And we are coming to a wrap on season 2. Yeah. So we've got, 3 or 4 more episodes left, Dan?
Yeah, that's about right.
And then we'll take a hiatus for the winter months, but Dan is just ramping up his training program online. So if you want additional training and understanding how to use Basleine technologies, where do they go to sign up, Dan?
You can do it from the Basleine Systems webpage. Is probably the easiest way to do it. Just go to the hydropoint.com/Basleine. October classes are full. They're already underway. November classes, I do have openings. So sign up, get in.
Yep. So once you got your systems blown out, sign up for some training and learn how to not only do the fundamentals with Basleine technology, but also some advanced usability, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, awesome. All right, everybody, go out, have a great week. Be safe, work hard, and we will see you again next week for another exciting episode of Tech Talk Tuesday.
All right. Cheers.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. See you later.